Alright, let's get started. There's some people watching on the stream as well. Sure. So welcome to whoever is looking there as well. I'm going to give a small introduction to Lmod. So, how many people here are not familiar with Lmod yet? Everybody is an expert user?
Me? I'm not.
You're not the user. So I think maybe Damien and colleague are not very familiar with it, a little bit here.
We are considering, but not okay.
Because the Flemish people haven't heard about it. But so what I want to do is I want to highlight some of the cool things that Lmod can do. And Robert may have to help me with some of it. I don't know the syntax in Lua, but I'm sure that's going to work out. So just quickly, how I and our team bumped into Lmod. So it's because of EasyBuild. So after a while we realized that and other people were telling us as well, it's becoming very easy to install lots of modules, and your module tree is growing really big if you just keep it the normal flat scheme that lots of people use, and that's becoming an issue, right? Module avail is getting very slow, and it's very hard to navigate the module tree to make sense out of it, and we started looking for solutions. And pretty quickly we ran into Lmod and the idea of the module hierarchy, and I'm going to show a little bit how that works. So that's the core idea, that's actually why Lmod was created. But then when we started looking into Lmod, we discovered all kinds of cool stuff, and lots of cool stuff has been added since then as well. Very short, Lmod is developed by Robert at TACC in Austin. It was created from the ground up to support module hierarchies, because the standard modules tool basically doesn't. You can get away with it up to some level, but it starts breaking down pretty quickly. It's been there since forever, especially if you count the releases. It now has good documentation, at least it's getting there, and Robert is working hard on getting it well documented. This has only been there, how long, Robert? 6 months?
What?
A year maybe?
Let's average it and say 9.
9, okay. So this is fairly recent, but it's becoming very good documentation very quickly. Lmod is mostly a drop-in alternative for Tcl-based module tools, so lots of people don't realize this. So it's not 100% equal, and there are some things I can show that it does differently and better. But two important things to know is Lmod does not force you to use Lua in the module files. It still supports Tcl module files. That's one very important thing. It also doesn't force you to use the module hierarchy. You can still use a flat module tree, and Lmod will be just as happy as the standard modules tool is. So it's not forcing you to rewrite your whole module tree, basically. You can still use Tcl modules, you can still use the flat scheme if you want to. And even then, Lmod will help you in various ways, and I'll show some of them. It's still being developed, so it's getting new features as people ask for it. It makes it so much easier for users in various ways, and there's a whole community around it. There's sort of a community around the other thing as well, but they're throwing patches around and the tool isn't going anywhere, so Lmod is doing a better job. So the highlights, and this is definitely not everything, but it's the things I like most about Lmod. So it's hierarchy aware, and I'll show you what that means in a short demo. It has caching of module files, so you can make module avail really fast, even though you have thousands of modules on a slow shared file system. Lmod has a way of dealing with that. You can basically create a single file that has all the module contents in them, and then Lmod queries that file, and loading a single big file is not an issue. You do have the burden, sort of keeping the Lmod cache up to date, but Lmod provides scripts for that, and you basically just set up a simple cron job that keeps the cache up to date, and you're good. It provides lots of hooks to customize the functionality of Lmod. So one good example is it has a load hook. So every time somebody does a module load, you can define extra things that should happen, like logging the load somewhere. So you can then later query the information and get statistics of how many times stuff gets loaded and so on. And there's lots of hooks for other stuff as well. It has the NL shorthand command. So the good thing that Robert recognized here is that both load and list start with an L, and you can use that. So ML without any arguments is module list, and NL with something behind it, with the name of a module behind it, is module load, that module. It has ML avail and ML all the other stuff as well, so you can easily use it. So it's harder to mistype ML than it is to mistype module. So that helps as well. You can load and unload modules using, well, the plus is not really needed, right?
Well, you don't need the plus,
you
because
don't-
you
don't
can
need-
put the plus, but it's ignored.
Yeah.
The thing I should point out that if you start getting used to ML and have to go back to Tmod, which is what I call there's a way to install ML to get it to work with that too, so your brain doesn't, fry.
Yeah. And then there's various other stuff. So the module avail subcommand is case insensitive, which can be really helpful for users. Like how
Optionally.
Optionally, yeah, you have to enable it. So by default, it's not, but it's easy to enable it.
Yeah, for sites that refuse to use lowercase names for their module names.
Yeah, some people do, right? So users don't have to know how you spell Java. Is it capital J? Is it all caps? Is it small? The load is still case sensitive though, so you have to get the exact module name right for the load. That's fine. It can send output to standard out rather than standard error. So because of how the modules tool works internally, if you do module avail, the output actually goes to standard error, and people get very confused when they start grabbing or counting how many modules there are. With Lmod, you can tell it to go to standard out. It doesn't by default, I think, but you have to enable it, but still, it's trivial. And then people don't go nuts with all the piping and redirection and all that stuff. Has module families and properties. I'll show what that means. It has push env as an alternative to set env. I'll explain that as well. Something that Ward really likes is module collections. So you can set up your module tree for a job or for a project. You can load lots of modules until you get things right. Everything is in place and the dependencies are there and all that stuff. And then you hit module save. You give it a name. And then you can trivially restore that same collection later. You do just module restore that same name, and you get the whole setup back. So you don't have to reload the modules in the right order to get the same thing again.
And you can also set up your own default if you want it.
Yeah, and it has the default collection as well. Yeah, and there's a lot of other things as well. Yeah, I'll just skip that and go straight to the demo. So I've done this at supercomputing as well at the TACC booth, so I have a small demo prepared here. I should actually push this on GitHub, but it's just a couple of scripts that set things up. I'm basically using EasyBuild here to generate a bunch of toy modules to play with, and a hierarchical module tree. So it's telling EasyBuild here, use the hierarchical module naming scheme. And then by firing this EB command, it will install only modules, not the software, for WRF, the toolchain, and all the dependencies below. And basically what you get is you get a module tree that looks like this. So it's organized hierarchically. So basically this is the top of the module tree. These are the core modules. You'll get 2 versions of GCC, one Tickle module, one Lua, one modify and Lua syntax. You'll get the ones for the toolchains as well. The other one is just a toy module I put in place manually to show some other stuff. So this is basically the top of the hierarchy. The next level in the hierarchy is then the compiler-specific module. So basically stuff that was compiled with this particular version of GCC or this 492 version of GCC, and I'll show what that means in a bit. And then the bottom part is specific to a particular compiler and a particular MPI library and version, and then these are the things that are installed on top of that. So this is where you would find WRF, which is actually what the user would care about. And it has this, of course, for this particular GCC OpenMPI combination, and also for the other one. So what does this mean? So I have the module path set up here. To only have the core modules by default. So if you do module avail, you will only see these GCC, also the tool chains, ignore these for now. I didn't bother to hide them, but users will typically, depending on what you want users to see, you may not expose these to users. But the compiler modules are basically what we care about here. So that's all you see. WRF doesn't seem to be here. It doesn't seem to be available. It actually is. You won't see it with module avail. It's not there. But Lmod is telling you maybe you want to try module spider. So what module spider will do, it will not only look in your current module path, it will look in the whole module tree. So Lmod knows what can be made available by loading other modules. So if you do module spider, WRF, it will actually tell you, oh yes, I know about WRF, I know about this version. And if you specify this version, it will also tell you, I know about this version of WRF, and you can reach it by loading these modules first. So it basically tells you, if you travel down the module hierarchy, WRF will be there.
No, it's good. I mean, the only thing is there for a user.
It says you need to load.
No, I think the statement is good, but why not stick the wharf on the end as well, right? So they can just copy paste the whole 3 modules and then do. I don't know. What do people think? It'll be personal preference, right?
To add WRF here.
The statement is better, yes, definitely, than the one we have in our report.
Yeah, this is the latest Lmod version from GitHub. So.
Okay, what do other people think? I mean, for a user, right? What do you think? To include the module name for Wharf on the end of that list. So you can get it by doing this or this.
So people can copy paste it?
Yeah.
That's.
Well, they can still copy paste it from 2 different places.
Yeah, that's 2.
Well, yeah, I still have to say, you know, I don't know.
Okay, it's personal preference. Doesn't matter. I don't care.
Well, if you refresh,
It's better. The statement is better there than the one that we have currently.
Is there a hook for spider?
There's a documentation spider. I mean, there's a hook for adding documentation, which I think I put for you, but I can't remember somebody. But there's no hook for that. That's, you know, I don't want the hooks to be something where you have to be an Lmod expert to do stuff with. I want it to be
Simple. Yeah.
simple. And that starts to get complicated.
Okay. So let's see what happens if we do the separate steps manually. So basically here we only have GCC and some other core modules available. So loading WRF is not going to work. Lmod doesn't see the module in module avail, so you can't load it. So you basically have to open a couple of boxes first before you can load it. So we know WRF is behind this GCC module, so we load the GCC module, which will open up another part of the module tree. So if you do module avail now, we'll both have these core modules, and we'll have these other modules that were built with this particular GCC version. So notice that Lmod also flags which modules are loaded if you do module avail, which is a nice thing, next to, of course, the default module. So now, if we check back what Spider told us, it will tell you we need to both load the GCC and this MPI. So this MPI is now available. So we can actually load this as well, which will open another box in the module tree, another part. So now this whole thing has been added. And now we have WRF here, so we can actually load it. If we check what is loaded, it will of course have the GCC and the OpenMPI loaded, and then a bunch of other stuff because the modules generated with EasyBuild have all the loads inside for dependencies as well, and we'll have WRF. This is one part of the hierarchy, so you only see things stepwise, and the nice thing is that you only see things that are compatible with each other. So you don't see modules that were built with another GCC version because you couldn't load them anyway. Same for OpenMPI, stuff that was built on top of another MPI library or another version of OpenMPI, you just don't see it. It's not available for loading. Now where it gets really fun is that Lmod knows about two two modules of WRF, this particular version, that were built with a different GCC and a different OpenMPI. So what you can do now is you can tell Lmod to unload the GCC it has and load this other one. Same for OpenMPI, and load this. And it's smart enough to know that it has to swap out some of the other modules. So these have all changed because you're basically going somewhere else in the module tree. And it knows that it has to reload all of these, including WRF, because it's somewhere else in the module tree. So you don't have to do all the unloading by hand and reloading. It's smart enough to see all of these things match, and I actually know what to do. So your module list will still be working, WRF will still be working, you have a different GCC and a different OpenMPI you had before.
Yeah, but you can also just, are you gonna show them the other trick?
What's the other, swapping?
Just type module ML space GCC / unless you broke this.
Ah, okay, yeah. So this was the, yeah, so okay. This is the explicit way, so you unload and you load yourself. So let's see, I have now this one loaded. I can actually just go back and load the old version of GCC again. And what Lmod is going to do, it's going to see, okay, you have a GCC loaded, you're now loading a different one. So I have to unload the 492, I will load the 483. And it's smart enough to do all the unloading and loading for you. Now I have to be careful here, I have a different OpenAPI, so I need
No, you don't.
No.
Put the.
No, say return.
You didn't change. Oh,
yeah,
you didn't
it has a
change
different
version.
OpenAPI version, so there's no match there.
Yeah.
But if I load this one, then it's smart enough to basically reactivate everything. So what happened here is I loaded a different version of GCC. It saw that all of this stuff is not available in this part of the module tree. So the issue here was the OpenAPI version 181 or 184 is not available in this part of the module tree. I do have 181. So if I load that then as well, it knows I can reactivate all of this because it's available in this part, and now I'm back to a working environment. So that's what I mean with Lmod is hierarchy aware. It knows that things match up, that you're basically going from one place to another, you're swapping compilers and API, and it's smart enough to know that it can keep things active or reload modules and so on.
So what happened there was basically that it matched the wharf on the last one, right? Really, and then
Well, but see, the
reloaded
thing
all
is,
the
see, this is the thing. This is my beef with EasyBuild. See, he should have just been able to swap the GCC, and everything should have gotten reloaded rather than making all those modules inactive. The problem is that you guys open it. There's a load statement inside of GCC. When the other one gets unloaded, when you unload the old GCC, it unloads OpenMPI, and so everything becomes inactive.
No,
You should never do that.
The issue is that it's the OpenAPI version, right?
No.
Yes, because
you
I-
have a load statement in Wharf which says to unload OpenMPI.
The issue is that I loaded OpenMPI version specific.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
So let's go back. Okay, so I have 483.
Yeah, so purge things out.
No, you doesn't have to purge.
Let's see. So these were loaded. I have to purge, right?
Unload OpenMPI, version specific and load.
If I do it like this,
But it will be the default.
this will be the default. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if I now switch to a different GCC, this will work.
Yes.
So here it's smart enough to say, okay, apparently you didn't care about the version of OpenAPI.
Yeah, so-
Okay.
So even if the version is different,
So the
What
rule
would it choose if you have two OpenMPIs?
so
In this case, so let's say that here we have the OpenMPI 1.8.1
yes.
and 1.8 point whatever.
So so the rule is that if you switch hierarchies and you specify the default, you get the default.
Ah, okay.
If you specified a version, I assume that you want that version. And so you have to have match, if you want to switch compilers, everything else, and you specified a non-default version, then that's what because you said, I want this version, I'm gonna assume that's what you want.
If you don't specify the version, it will just go to the other part of the module tree and take the default there, which may be a different version, but because apparently you didn't.
I just want to know that, so there is a way to, so it's not randomly chooses, but
It doesn't choose, it just picks the default,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
And you can set the default, or you get the one that's just.
Yeah, of course, yeah, it doesn't have to be the latest one, you can set the default. Okay, so this is one part, this is the hierarchy aware part. The caching, so I have a script here that updates the Lmod cache. I now have a cache available already. So there's a script here that I wrote for Lmod and contributed back that updates the cache. And you just tell it where the cache goes and where the timestamp file goes and where the modules are, and it will just go and do it. And the cache looks like, so the cache is here. It's just this module t.lua thing, and if you wanted to make it a little bit faster, you can, and the script does this for you, you can compile the cache, which makes it faster to load.
Considerably faster.
So
Well, it
this
depends.
basically-
On his laptop, it doesn't make any difference at
Yeah,
all.
here it doesn't make, but so it does make difference on our system, for example. No, not this. So on our system we have a pilot setup of Lmod. We have, let's see, how many modules do we have? Let me do a quick count.
Model avail, count,
Yeah, but Avail I have to be careful because it puts things on.
TERS.
TERS doesn't. So we have 1700 modules here, all flat, so all next to each other. With Lmod, this is going to be really quick because it has the cache file. So in 1.5 seconds, it lists everything. It just loads the cache file, reads the cache, and that's very quick. If I do the same thing, I'll have to be a little bit careful. I have to fiddle with my module paths because of something stupid in my account. Just to make it a fair comparison, let me hard set this here. So this is the standard modules tool is still what Robert referred to as tmod, so the tickle-based one. If I do module avail here, it takes forever. It's just because it actually goes to the file system, scans the file system for all the files. It doesn't even have to look at the contents, it's just listing the files. So this takes 7.5 seconds. With Lmod, it's a lot quicker, and here we actually are reading the contents of the module files as well, because of the property stuff. So it's seeing these
those are
modules
sticky.
are sticky, so that's a particular property, so it needs to actually go inside the module files themselves. So Lmod is doing a lot more, and it's still a lot quicker. So this really helps. On my laptop you won't notice the difference, but on a place where the modules, you have a lot of modules and they are on a shared file system, it makes a big difference. Okay, so that's the cache thing. The hooks, I'm not going to show the hooks, it's a little bit harder. ML, so ML is very useful. This is module list, unloading is, or unloading.
Can you go back to your machine?
Here?
Yeah, and you're running ML there, and you're running Lua there, Lmod there?
Yeah, this is the latest Lmod.
Yeah, so now do ML minus D. Lowercase, yeah, like just like that, space AB.
Yeah, this will show all the defaults.
Just the defaults.
But this also, does it here work as well?
No, it doesn't work. I thought maybe Tmod supported it, but I just looked, it
Yeah,
doesn't.
It doesn't. So you can just show the default modules, what you would get if you load them versionless. That's also useful. So ML is very useful rather than typing or mistyping module.
Yeah, I can't type module to save my life.
It's very clear. So the shortcuts, I also showed those. So Avail is case insensitive if you configure it the right way. So let's see how it's configured here.
Case insensitive.
So if case independent, it's not sorting. No, I have it set up here to do case insensitive, so let's do that. So the Avail
Yeah, we'll find all of this.
The avail is case insensitive, so even though the modules are spelled differently, it still finds them, which is not the case with tmod. I see, I'm already doing it. It's not the case here. It will just not find the modules, and then if people don't know how things are spelled, they will say, I want this installed, and you have to say it's actually there, and that's a whole mess. So Lmod doesn't do this by default, but you can easily configure it to do it, or just set an environment variable to make it do it, regardless of how it was configured. Subcommand output to standard out. Okay, this is a fun one as well. So what you do module avail, and people want to count modules or they want to grep. They get very confused because the count returns
zero.
and they get all the output. So basically what's happening is that everything is going to standard error. Even though it's not an error, it's sending all the output to standard error. That's just,
Pain in the ass.
yeah. It's how it works internally. It basically has to do it. So what you have to tell people, if you want to do this, you have to redirect standard error to standard out, and then you can send it through the pipe, and at least it will kind of do what you want it to do. It's still going to be bloody slow, but it actually does what you think it would do. If Lmod is configured the right way, let me check on this.
You can just set Lmod
Yeah, but I think here it's configured right. Maybe it doesn't tell me.
It does, it's just buried.
So
Yeah.
here it actually does it by default if you configure it the right way.
So,
There's no more standard error magic.
yeah, so type $lmod command, no, just $lmod cmd space bash space list.
Okay.
That's what happens when it goes to standard out. It just puts all these echo commands with all kinds of magic quotes.
So I can do the same module. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that just sends standard. That just sends standard.
Yeah. So this is standard error.
Yeah.
So if I redirect this, I can make it disappear. Wow. This goes to standard error, so that's why it's kind of stupid. Lmod does it differently. It actually does. So the output of this gets output of this gets executed, and if you do this echo trick, it actually gets printed to standard out as well, rather than just going through a standard error. So it took Robert a while, I think, to figure out how to do this. And the nasty thing is you have to be very careful with escaping here and all that kind of crap. So it's not trivial, but for the users this is of course a lot easier. They don't get confused anymore. Module families, okay, I have some of this here as well. So let's see, not here. So let's go back to a clean state. So module families are basically, it's kind of like conflicts on steroids. So you can have conflict statements in your modules, and what you basically have to do with the tickle-based modules version is you have to, that's what most people do anyway, that's what EasyBuild does by default as well, include conflict statements like this. So you can't load the same module, different versions twice. If you don't include this, Tmod is stupid enough to actually let you load two GCC versions at the same time, which doesn't make sense. One of them is going to win anyway, and you'll get very confused. So that's why EasyBuild includes these conflict statements by default. With families, you can actually take it to the next level. So the issue with conflict statements is that this is a module name. That's the only thing you can put there. So if you want to make GCC conflict with Intel, you would have to change this, or maybe add another one, like this. And if you add another compiler, you have to go back to all your module files and update them, and it's just a mess. So that's not going to work. What you can do with Lmod, it has this family concept. You can just include statements like this, and I think this is one of the things that only works in Lua. No, it works in Tickle as well. Okay.
You can say family compiler, family space compiler, just like
Right.
Without the parens, it'll work.
Yeah. So this works in ticket syntax as well. So basically what you're saying here is this module is part of a certain category of modules, and Lmod, please make sure only one of these is loaded at any given time. Don't ever load two things of this at the same time.
And it's case sensitive, so if you mix your cake, it's just doing a straight,
String comparison.
well, it's a hash table, but yeah. It says if there's something so the nice thing is you can have multiple families. You can have an MPI family, you can have an HDF5 family, you can have anything you want, but it's case sensitive.
So if I load this GCC version, what Elma's actually doing behind the scenes is it's just setting this environment variable. So it's telling, I have something in the compiler family loaded, and it's this particular module. So in my toy modules here, I have an Intel one as well, which I created by hand. And I also specified the compiler family here. So what Lmod is going to do is, even though it's a different module name, it's smart enough to see, okay, I better make sure only one of these gets loaded at the same time. So I'm actually going to swap out the GCC and I'm going to load the Intel instead. So the swapping behavior is what it does by default. You can tell it not to swap as well and just complain and say, you already have a compiler thing loaded, please unload another one, or unload the other one first before you load this one. So this depends on how you configure Lmod, but the swapping thing is what it does by default. You can, for compilers, I'm not 100% convinced that the compiler family is the best thing, because you can combine the GCC with an Intel if you do it in the right way, it's okay. For MPI, for example, this makes perfect sense. It only makes sense to have one MPI module loaded. Having two at the same time, it's just gonna...
But you can override that. If you want to have two compilers load at the same time, you can say your Lmod if you do export Lmod expert, Lmod _expert equals 1, then you can load both of them.
Yeah. So hopefully your users don't.
Can we print out a big fat warning, don't use it?
I don't tell people about it. It's
Okay. That's also fine. Don't put it in the docs.
Yes, you do.
It's in the docs, but nobody. Hey, look, anything you put in documentation is safe from users.
So the family stuff is very cool. Depends on how far you want to take it, of course. You can go really all out on this, but depends.
But in fact, the documentation when you have it so that the family conflicts, it says submit a ticket if you want to load both.
Yeah. Let's see, properties. So you can configure Lmod to know about certain properties. This is this property table. So you can flag things as being experimental. You can specify that things are mic aware, so Intel Xeon Phi stuff, or GPU aware, and so on. So let me try this with one of the modules I have here. So maybe I can say this Intel core, this Intel module is experimental. You'll need to help me here, Robert. Is it add property?
Yeah, add _property.
And then I do, what was it, state?
State and then experimental. And you have to match the spelling, but that should be, I think that's right.
Yeah. So let's see. So if I load this module,
Yep.
it's going to tell me it's experimental. If I do module avail, it's also going to tell me it's experimental. So you can invent your own properties, and it's just a matter of adding them to this Lmod RC, which is a Lmod configuration file. You have full control over colors and what kind of line it says and what short thing it's using and so on.
And you get, this was just I throw this out there as an example, and you can do whatever you want with it. The sticky thing is the one thing that, the thing to say Lmod, you should leave alone.
Yeah, so the sticky property is a special property. So I can add property Lmod sticky here. So if I now check, it's going to tell me that it's both experimental and sticky. And sticky means that if you have it loaded and you purge, it will
It
stay
comes
there.
back.
Sorry?
It comes back.
It actually comes back. Yeah, it actually unloads and then loads again. So here for Intel, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I guess. On our system, we have these cluster modules. So what they do is they set up module paths. So it finds our modules. They set up these environment variables for OS and architecture and cluster name and PBS default. So when people do QSub, they go to the right master, PBS master server. So we really want to make sure, or we try to make sure that one of these cluster modules is loaded at all times. So even if people do module purge, it stays there. Of course, you can force. So you can, if you do force purge, it will still disappear. So if it really is getting in your way and you know what you're doing, you can still do it. And EasyBuild, Lmod is actually nice enough to tell you to do it.
Is there a way in EasyBuild to say, I want to add these properties if you build a module
Yeah.
file?
Right now you can't yet, but it's in the works, let's say. The tricky thing for EasyBuild is, so Lmod has to know about the properties, right? It has to know about which ones are available, which ones have, what color they have, which line you want to use. And EasyBuild, if you want to set properties, I think it's a good idea that EasyBuild checks on whether it's a known property. So either you check with Lmod, if Lmod is configured to actually know about this property, or you do it as a separate thing, like EasyBuild has a list of known properties. So we haven't figured that part out yet. So this is maybe we need to talk with Robert how we can query Lmod about known properties or something. If that's there, that would be very useful.
I think
The family thing is also, that's actually easy to add in EasyBuild. It's not there yet. The tricky part is you can support families and tickle syntax modules as well, but then you have to add a guard like only do this if you're using Lmod. So there's a tricky guard that we can include. We figured it out and it's there in the pull request somewhere, but it hasn't been merged yet.
I think most important would be that you don't start to mess with the module files generated by EasyBuild, because you forget about that after a while. So that you can do it through EasyBuild.
Yeah, so EasyBuild, you don't want to change them manually. EasyBuild has to know how to.
Exactly.
It's not that hard, it's just adding a single line to the module.
My question is what happens if you define a property which is not in
Let's find out.
the RC, because then if it doesn't do anything, then who cares?
I think it.
Is it hard?
I can't remember. Yeah.
It tells you something's wrong.
I mean, I
Load
could.
the module, and if you do module avail, it just ignores it. On avail, but on load, it actually bars.
Now, I think if you change, go back
So,
to the.
so if you would, EasyBuild does a test load, right? If you install something, so it would notice something is wrong. So it will not say this is a working module if there's a wrong property in there. It will just barf.
Yeah, so that's going to be a problem.
No, you just have to make sure you don't inject wrong properties. You
Yeah.
have to check on that. So I think what we with EasyBuild would need is,
Well, I suspect you could also generate the properties.
EasyBuild should generate the RC file. Or what is it?
Lmod BRC.
That's a bit. That's a bit.
It's not that hard. It's just.
You have to get the RC file right before you use EasyBuild with it.
Yeah.
And EasyBuild just talks to Lmod. Tell me about the properties you know about.
Yeah, but you could set. You've got the environment variable. You could set it. You could set LMRRC and generate one.
Yeah, but okay, but the Lmod RC that EasyBuild uses better be the one that the users use as well.
Yeah.
So I think that the best thing is just querying Lmod. What properties do you know about, and then EasyBuild can check on that.
Well,
We can talk about that later. What else? So properties is nice, and colors, and you can basically tag things as whatever you want. You have full control. Push env is another nice one. So I think I have it in here somewhere. Yeah.
Yep.
So push env and set env. Push env is an alternative to set env. It basically does the same thing, but it does more. And you may not be aware of this yet, but this is actually an issue with modules if they set environment variables. So let me show you what the problem is. Let's see, how can I have both the set env and the push env in there, so I can easily show you. So if I set, suppose I'm in an environment where
You want to set, yeah, okay, yeah,
where both of these are set.
yeah.
Let me make this a little bit readable. So I have both of these defined. I have no modules loaded. If I load this GCC module, it will do as you expect. It will, so it had the set env on CC and the push env on CXX, which redefines them. Nothing special here. Now the thing is, if you unload this GCC module, what both the Tmod and Lmod will do, it will reverse the commands we have in there, so it will try and revert the update of these environment variables. If you use set env, and both Lmod and Tmod have this issue, you had a set env there, but it didn't know what the original value was. So it's just going to unset the $cc. This may surprise users. The push env is actually a solution to that. So even though it had G++ there, because you're using push env and Lmod, it actually knows, oh, I better remember the old value, because if I want to reverse this, I can restore the original value. So basically, push env is kind of it's a drop-in replacement for set env that doesn't work. It shouldn't, unless you rely on this somehow, it shouldn't break things.
How many levels does that work at? One level, or can it keep going?
As much memory as you've got on the system.
Basically, it's a stack implemented in the form of a string.
Yeah, so if you search for, there's, yeah, right there.
It does, right?
And notice that you can't read that,
Yeah, it's
because
because code.
I base64 encode it because I didn't want to have to deal with spaces and quotes. So you can do things with prompts, you know, you can have a stack of prompts, have that change. Who was it? They had the prompt was set in the module, you unload the module, the prompt goes away, and users get really confused. Right?
Absolutely. We got confused too.
Yeah, I mean, well, I get, yeah.
It's sticky.
Come on, my typing is broken. So if I unload this and echo again, oh, whoops. What happened? Maybe my environment was broken. It has the stack still here, okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can't, yeah, that's a problem. You can't do that. It's not that smart.
So this, I was fiddling around here, so maybe I screwed up.
Now unload it.
Unload, echo, okay, so whatever is there, it will stay.
But the problem is that it's not, I don't know if you reset the variable.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's why it screwed up before.
Yeah, so if I now redefine it here, and then unload, of course it's going to be what it was before again, so it's, yeah, but that makes sense, right? I mean, Lmod can track all the exports you do. So it just sets it to what it was set before you loaded the module, not the previous.
Yeah, so, you know, if you, yeah, because that stack variable is, yeah.
Okay, one more before I give it over to Robert for a more advanced update, let's say, on Lmod. Collections. So say I want to load all of these, and it took me a lot of work to set this whole thing up. It didn't in this case. Or I want to give it the name, like the name of my project. I can do module save. Lmod demo, and then if I can actually, well, I can do it in a different shell, but it's going to be tricky. So say I'm in a different shell, I can check on collections.
Yeah, SL.
So it knows about, oh, I have a test collection here as well.
It autocompletes, no? Doesn't it autocomplete automatically? If you do restore and then tap?
Yep. No, I'm not sure the restore knows about that.
Well, it works on my account. Maybe I put it.
Anyway, so you can define collections, you can query it, which collections are available. I guess you can, do module show collection work or something like this? Can you see what's in a collection before
Yes,
loading
there's
it?
a way to do it in, describe.
Right, like this?
Yep.
Okay, so it will show you without doing it, and then you can restore it if you're happy with it.
And do one more thing for me. Load some module.
Good, yeah.
No, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't have. Well, let me do it differently. So let me load these.
Fine. No, don't do. You don't have to save it.
Okay.
Just type ML space R space Lmod down. Yes. ML.
So it will see what was loaded already, and it will just add the missing stuff.
No, it does a purge first.
Ah, that's a purge. Okay.
And so that was what I wanted to point out is that if you add a module and do restore, you get back to exactly what you had.
If I have this, and then with the restore, it will kick out the GCC I had.
Yeah.
This is very useful as well. If you have a project and it needs lots of modules,
Yeah,
you
that's
get
really
to-
good for a Slurm environment or something, right? So for a JavaScript or something like that.
Well, yeah, I
because-
use it all the time like that. I compile software, save it in, and all my job scripts will just do restore. But the one thing you need to remember about this is the pinning of the versions. By default, it always takes the it takes the default module.
Well, it
And
takes what the username was.
Yeah, like and sometimes you just want exact versions like they're there, no matter what the default
Yeah,
is.
even if the
And
default
then you need
gets-
to add the pin version option. And NL config, you can see it.
But here we have it right.
Should be there somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
that-
versions that restore.
And then you restore exact versions that were loaded instead of
Even
what
if the default
was.
changes or something.
Which can be important, for example, if you install new software after the user created its collection, the default can change and then the restore can fail.
Can
Well,
fail or
that's-
do something else.
Yeah, but I think that's an easy build issue. It really is.
Well,
don't-
the failing is, but in doing something differently is not.
Well, it has to do with the fact the way you got. Anyway, it's fine, but it really is it's because you do all these module loads inside your module files that causes problems. But it's a complicated issue. We don't have this problem. I've never had this problem.
Okay, let me wrap up and hand it over to Robert. So this I basically showed, and I showed a lot more. One more thing. So Robert, me, and Marcus from Jülich have a paper on basically the basics behind Lmod and the module hierarchy and how we can use EasyBuild to create a module hierarchy or organize your modules in a hierarchical way. A paper at the Hoste workshop, so it's available publicly, and you can read it if you want to get more details on how this thing works underneath. Maybe questions. Are there any questions? So I think Robert in
doesn't
Canada,
want, yeah.
he's awake already? Okay. Can we avoid a lot of loads using Lmod? He's asking you, Bart. But
Can you?
can you avoid? I'm not sure what he means. but-
If you do
can ask him, Robert.
it's not gonna. You do a module load, you get a module load. I mean, how would it be any different?
Well, what you can do with Lmod is you can do well. It's not specific to Lmod. How do you specify something has to be loaded? What's the name? I forgot.
Always load?
No.
That's the default collection.
You can. So with EasyBuild, you typically load the modules hard in the
Yes,
Module
you can also do prereqs.
prereq. Yeah. So you can basically say something is a prerequisite for loading, and you can say, okay, if you want to load Wharf, you have to have netcdf loaded, otherwise it just won't work.
But you can also test both in TCL and or in Tmod and Lmod. Is the thing loaded? If it's not, then load it.
And that would fit, if you would do it like that, for example, with the collection stuff work?
Yeah.
That's what you guys do in TACC, always.
Well, yeah. Collections turned out to be much harder than you'd think because of order issues.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Order matters, right? So I mean, if the
Well,
wharf,
so
especially in our case, if the wharf.
no, it worked. Collection works fine now because what happens is that when you reload a collection, all the load statements are ignored.
The load statement in the module. Yeah.
The load statements in the modules are ignored because you already know what's going to get loaded. You have the list,
Yeah.
so you don't need to reload anything. And that was took a while to get there.
Okay. We can make this work. You should just.
So then that's the source of the war, that's the source of the problem with
This is
the,
a wireless.
with the
HDMI, you need
defaults.
to put-
Because that's what I imagine. So I was wondering why would that
Yeah.
matter, right? Wharf in the end.
Robert question.
Yeah, this is
But
power.
it doesn't, right? This doesn't load it.
USB.
The issue was I made
And that's all we
it work
Yeah.
fine,
Yeah, and that you need
they installed simply a new version, one of the libraries I was using.
Robert,
so they might not
question
actually work. Because it saw default had changed, and it was, you have to do direct loads. So the question was for a part of the option that we say exactly which separate module is currently loaded.
Is that a configure option that like?
That's, you can set in your module RC, or it's environmental variable. It's not fun. Yeah, it's an environmental.
So in our case, that's necessary then. I would say, right?
But you use hybrid.
We use the hierarchy. Still, we potentially have a problem, right? Potentially. I mean, if you start messing around with default.
Yeah, I think everybody will have a problem if we actually do loads instead of the.
Like, for example, you have something, you make a collection and somebody installs a new version of HDF5, which doesn't work. Right? It's broken.
Yeah, it will need. Yeah, but everybody uses EasyBuild, they use it, you can't use it. And it's an annoying problem because it wasn't my job space, so here my job stuff is failing, which was extremely annoying. Want iets? Ja. Tak autotap loslaten, dat weet ik niet. Alles is gefixt, maar ongeveer ook elke easy-config is geweest.
Ja, dat is zo.
Maar met de dooraf, het ziet er echt allemaal decopieerd.
Nooit meer.
All right.
Ja, maar het zijn echt allemaal... Het ziet er echt heel decopieerd.
One of the things I want to point out, and there's a document on Read the Docs on how to do a transition. So that if you want to play with Lmod and you're not using it right now, you should try out the Read the Transition document to use your current module system and install Lmod in your own account and start playing with it. And so you can do that and see whether things work or you run issues before you make it available to everybody. Okay. Yeah, so Kenneth has stolen all my thunder and covered this slide. He also mentioned this, but I spent a lot of time on Lmod Read the Docs I transitioned all the old documentation into it, and I've been adding to it. It's a nice, the read the docs and restructured text is a reasonable way to put documentation together. I've been pretty happy with it, and I keep trying to add more documentation. There's a lot of stuff on the mailing list, but you have to go search it, and you have to know what the right phrase is, so I'm working on this. One of the things that we have got ourselves a Cray, much to my chagrin. And my boss knows this, so I'm not worried that it's going out in public. The Cray module system is its own beast, and so there are all kinds of things like no dupes. So one of the choices you get to make is whether you want duplicate entries in your path supported or not. So if you let's say your initial path on the system is has user local bin in it, and then you have a module that also puts user local bin in it. And if that module gets unloaded, there are two choices. Either it removes one copy, or either there's one version of the user local bin in your path, or there are two. And so Lmod supports whether you want to have duplicates or not. But Cray modules use this path-like feature to maintain a stack and of modules that are loaded, and so it gets very confused. Love the fact that monitor just keeps flipping it out. Anyway, I had a problem with it, so I changed it so that there's only one copy. So if you say you want no dupes, that's what you get. That's how Lmod works by default, is you get no duplicates. I put out a question on the mailing list on whether I ought to change it so the default is allowing duplicates or not, and the response was back, dupes are evil, don't do it.
The tickle-only version of Tmod has another way of dealing with this. Every time you prepend something to path and it sees it's already there, it does a counting thing.
No, it doesn't. If it finds it, it doesn't add it.
It counts as well, and it knows if you unload something, it just does a -1. It has a trick in there, so it doesn't keep track of it in $path, but it has a side environment variable, or it does keep track of that. And that's actually probably the right way to do things. If it was there twice, it just says, okay, 2.
Okay,
I don't think it messes with the order. If it was already there, it just says, okay.
The one thing is that it doesn't change the order. But then that's news to me, because I've never seen that, because it's certainly not in the path. They must have some magic variable that's...
Yeah, there's a separate variable for it.
Okay. So the Tmod rule is that's what I did add, was Tmod rule is that the entries in the path don't replace it, don't move it, don't prepend it. If it's in the 4th place and you do a prepend on it, leave it where it is. Don't re-add to it.
So that's the default now, or?
Well, the default is if you prepend, you prepend. But you can turn on this Tmod rule. And then parsing, there's something weird between the way I evaluate Tmod or TCL and the way Tmod does. And so that I can generate a variable called, GNU 4.8_lib. And it turns out that it's illegal to have a dot in an environment variable. You can't, there's no way quoting or backslashing, you cannot have a dot, or a space for that matter, in an environment variable. It's just not possible. At least I can't figure out how to do it. So I've got a trick in there that says if an environment variable has a space or a dot in it, it just doesn't get emitted. Okay, well, we don't do this anymore, so I'm gonna stop. I'm not even gonna talk about that, but there are some cool things. So there are multiple ways to handle the things like Avail and Spider and stuff. So I like it going to standard error, because that's the way Tmod has always been, and so Lmod does the same thing, and so I've added a pager. But there was a problem with the default pager on Mac OS, which only affects maybe me, and Kenneth, but the Cray's the default pager is less. And the way it was set up, you would have to type Q every time to get out of it. You wouldn't just get the list and keep going, like the way I expect it to be. So I have now Lmod sets Lmod pager to less and sets the Lmod pager options to be those, and that gives consistent behavior across systems. But of course, if you change it to Lmod redirect, then none of this stuff matters. Kenneth wrote this update script, and it builds these two cache files, the module T file and the DBT file. Those are pure Lua tables, and it turns out that you can compile them, and I put the fact that I compiled them, and I also put the version of Lua on there, so that if you update your Lua, it won't roll, an old version won't be read by an old compile file won't be read by a new version. And the one thing that we talked about a couple days ago was Lmod, the tool that builds the cache can be run frequently, and your users will not get errors because the cache file is being built. It creates a new and moves the new to the old. Anyway, it works correctly. There's a very careful sequence that happens is how the cache gets built, so that there's no invalid cache available. And Lmod knows to look for, if it can't find the name, it looks for an old version, so that the time between when the original one gets copied to old and the new one hasn't moved into the place, it will do the right thing. Okay. So the one thing that Kenneth's file system, I swear, Kenneth, for a supercomputer, you guys have the slowest file system.
It got a lot better recently because we enabled caching on the file system itself.
Anyway,
Before, the module avail could have taken a minute. Now it was only 8 seconds.
yeah, that's a huge improvement. But anyway, so this has to do with Spider. So the point is that reading a big file, one single big file, is cheap. Walking a directory tree is expensive. And so that's the reason why caching is a big deal. So the Spider cache has walked the entire tree. It knows about properties. So if it's valid, then you get speed improvements. That's not why I did it. I did it because of properties. Because the problem with properties is the properties have to be in the module file. And if they're in the module file, I have to parse the module file, which means you have to do two things now. Now you've got to walk the tree and open every module file. So what happens is that one of the things I want to point out is that Lmod has rules about finding the module file it's going to use. It doesn't pick the first directory that contains it. It has to walk the entire tree to know where your version of the foo module is. So if foo is in 3 different module path entries, it has to know all the versions because it finds the first marked default. Otherwise, it finds the one with the highest version, and so that can be in any directory. So I have to walk all the directories. So, and in particular, their cluster module extends the module path, and anytime Lmod sees change the module path, it has to walk it, and extending the module path requires a rewalk. So by default, Lmod ignores the cache on loads, and the reason why I do that is it's demanding that if Lmod thinks the cache file is valid, that's exactly what it's going to use. It can't either it uses it or walks the entire directory tree. So you get to pick. So to be safe, Lmod ignores the cache for loads, but there are a couple places where UGent and Florida want to change that. So we did some testing and it does make a difference on the first module load, gets it down to about a second. So I'm gonna add that as an optional feature. You can configure Lmod to say, use the cache if it's valid. I've got some testing with that. That's what I used to do, but it was problematic. So this gentleman in the back has got me into this giant hole. Bright Computing, or there are people around here would like to get Bright to use EV and Lmod. And the problem is that they use a different strategy. So in version 5, well, it used to be Lmod only supported name version. You couldn't have category name version. That's what I mean by CNV or CCNV, which means you can have category, subcategory, name, and version. You can be as deep as you want. That's been supported since 5.0. Bright uses what I call name architecture version or name architecture version. So for example, they have a module, I don't know what, it's the fourth directory that just I don't get, but anyway. Intel /64/503/048. That's the name of a module. Now why you ever have the 048, it never makes any sense because Intel only ever has 503. They're never going to issue another 503. But that's
There's
immaterial.
been one case.
Huh?
Yeah. There's been one case,
There's
a
been one
49
case.
48 and a 49,
Oh,
or 503.
well,
But
anyway, don't install it.
normally it doesn't happen.
Usually they bump the other versions. Certainly on the compilers, I've never seen it. And we went through lots and lots of versions of compilers. We had, oh God, many versions of 13. Anyway, so they have, so what they do to handle the different flavors or different kinds of architecture, they'll put the name of the architecture as the second name. So they'll have, Intel 64 or Intel Mike, or they could have 32. And the problem is that Lmod needs to know the difference between category name version and name architecture version. And I can't tell. I'm not going to hardwire things. So my solution to this is, or what's the problem? The problem is picking defaults. So you'd like to be able to do module ML Intel MPI or Intel MPI 64 or Intel MPI 64 503. And have it do the right thing. And that's not supported right now. And so these should all work. So the difference between Lmod and Tmod is that Tmod allows for duplicate names. You can have, as long as you don't have a conflict in your GCC module, you can have as many GCCs loaded as you want. It doesn't care. And so you can load both of these. But Lmod only allows for one version of GCC. That's what I call the one name rule. And that has huge implications for naming, for handling this. So what I want is I want the name of the module to be Intel 64 and the version to be, sorry, let me try that again. I want the name of the module to be Intel MPI and the version to be 64 503 048. And so what I'm planning on doing is telling sites you have to register your architectures. So if you have the name, 64, Mike 32, I86, X86, 64, however you want to name things, you can do it any way you want, but you have to tell me what the architecture directories are, and they cannot be categories. You have to pick or choose. It's sort of you choose to have a name be an architecture, and that's the way I can tell the difference. And the other rule is that if you have a 64 or a Mike in a directory and you've told me that's an architecture, then any other directories in there are also architectures. So tomorrow Intel delivers a 128-bit chip and you have 64 and 128, but you didn't tell Lmod that 128 is an architecture, it's going to assume that it is. Because I looked at it, and it's really the only way that makes sense. And that's also the way things are gonna work. I mean, that's sort of the way people are they're gonna install Lmod, and it works, and then they're gonna add new architectures and not change Lmod. So that seems to be the natural way to handle things. And I tried to think about doing it other ways, but it's just very hard to tell. But this is a major change in Lmod. You know, in the old way, in the current version, username is either short or full. The new name, the username can be in between short and full. So you can have, you know, missed it. All these different ways to call the Intel MPI module. Those have to be supported. So, anyway, so I'm working on this. I've got about halfway through this. I can find the architectures. I have to deal with these other issues like, telling the difference between short and full and all that. So these are all works in progress. So both Tmod and Lmod have supported hidden modules. A hidden module is when the version has a leading dot. And so you can load it, but it's not available or spiderable unless in Lmod you can say -- show hidden, and it will show you the ones that are hidden. So this is a way to test modules without making them, put them on the system, but if users won't know them, and since they won't be the high version, they will be the one, they won't be automatically loaded. Invisible would be new, and so I've been thinking about this. We talked about this at the last hackathon. So, for example, Crays have architecture modules that aren't needed. Cray PE Barcelona is something, if you don't have the Barcelona chip, you never need to see that module. So there's lots of modules you just don't need to see. Sites may want to install a real module and hide them for testing. But what does this mean? Well, can users load an invisible module? Yeah, otherwise what's the point? Can you make all the modules invisible? Yes. Or can you make all versions invisible? Yes. Can you make a single version invisible? Yes. Can an invisible module be a default? No. But if you're testing, usually the invisible module might be a newer number, a higher number, so it would be, under normal rules, be the one that's picked. So you've got to, it affects, and then there are, how are sites going to mark modules as invisible? My thinking is that it's going to be added to the module RC file. So the whole point of having invisible modules is really pretty easy. It's handling them in terms of default. So getting the defaults right is going to be how the other part of handling, the invisible modules and default handling have to be done at the same time. The other problem is that a user can have a .module RC in Tmod, and they can pick what default they want. That's not supported in Lmod. And to do that is problematic because of the spider cache. The spider is going to be done independent of those files, and so the rules for what is the default has to take that into account, which means the last time I thought about it, I'm thinking I'm going to have to write some sort of mini language that's in the spider cache so that I can compute that on the fly. And I've got to, as I said, I've got to support invisible modules. Yeah, this is all talking about that. Anyway, well, I only went a half hour. But anyway, these are the things that I'm thinking about. I think that the the support for architectures is going to be the thing that comes next. I'm hoping that, I just have to find a couple days to finish it, but finding those couple days has been hard. And then I'm hoping to get the visible and default sometime this year, but no guarantees.
So Rob on IRC was asking if you can show us what you have now for the architecture stuff. How you would configure Lmod to, or maybe you can just try and show it briefly, how you would configure Lmod to know about different architectures.
Well, that code doesn't exist. I haven't, what I've got right now is in, well, the one thing I did want to show for you people on Craze, let me see if I can bump the, does this work?
Command equals should work.
No, view, plus. No, that doesn't seem to, oh, I know. Yep. This is our Cray, and when you log in on our Cray, those are the modules you see. That's it. If I that's what happens when you're in the Cray environment, so you get the standard list, but if I go back to TACC, ENV, I can get so I can do that. I think that was, let me clear that and do that again. So, I mean, we're really happy about this. The fact that we you know, our system, you know, that you don't have to use the Cray module files. These are all Lua files. Okay.
So does this basically align your query system with something like Stampede, or at
Yep.
least as close as you can make it?
This is as close as we can make it. Let's see. I don't know if this is going to work. Which is probably not going to work. Right now, yeah. So right now, if you can see that, see where I've got this commented out block that says architecture names?
Yeah.
That's how it works right now.
Okay.
In other words, all I've got is that table which says, you know, that's a list, just so I can play with it. And it's commented out, so it's in everybody's copy, but I've commented it out so that it you know, I can, so I haven't got any idea how that's gonna work.
So this would be added to Lmod RC,
Yeah, that's my plan, is to add to Lmod RC.
just like properties and.
Yeah. And so you would just have a list that says, or you might just have a list and I'll convert it into a table.
Yeah. Yeah. This looks weird. But
I mean, you probably have a list. But ultimately it needs to be a table for me, but I can have it in a list and convert it. But anyway, that's what I need.
So do you think you should, right now you plan to have one list of architectures? Should you split it up into different types of architectures, like processor families versus 32,
Why?
64 bits? And
It's
make
just-
that
it's just-
distinction?
It's only the first directory.
What if people have two levels?
Doesn't matter. I only need the first. If it's an A, it's all the rest are A's.
And so you have 64/Sandy Bridge.
Yeah,
You don't want to make the distinction between.
I don't care, it's all it's the first directory that matters to me. In other words,
Well, the second one may too, right?
no, it has to be an architecture. It can't be anything else. It's telling, I mean, you might have category name, architecture version. It's those things that are in the first directory that matter. Everything else has to be an architecture or a version. In other words, it can't be anything else. Just make it.
So you still can make the distinction.
I mean, I don't need to make a distinction. I mean, if you said 64 Haswell and 64 Sandy Bridge, rather than having them be together, you know, that's fine. It won't matter to me. It's just that I need the name in the first directory position. You know, for example, in this case where he talked about so I don't need to know that 503 is an architecture. It's not. All I need to know is that 64 or Mike or whatever goes in this, you know, it's the break over from name to architecture that I only think
you
that.
need to know where the split is.
Yes, I need to know where the split is, and the way
As soon as you have that, you don't really care what.
I don't really care. It's just stop.
And the issue now is that the name. So let's say the end part of the module name may actually have slashes in it as well. That's no problem.
That's no problem. You could have
With this solution, it's no problem, but now it is.
Well, right now, Lmod only knows about category name version or category name version, and you can have as many as that levels as you like. But currently, Lmod says that that a version is a file, and everything. If it's a directory, it has to be part of the name. Right? That's the current rule. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's close enough.
Yeah.
Whereas if I start supporting architectures as directories, they become part of the version, then, you know, that's, so making this, so it comes down to telling the difference between category name version and name architecture version. You had a question?
While looking at this, I have the following question. Considering as the user asking a developer, what if you made this language that we see there, tunable in the config file, CC&V for example, so that you don't have to dive into heuristics code to basically infer from what is on the file system what it means? What if we could have somewhere a tunable like NAAV is now actually the default pattern that should be used for understand what it is?
I'm not following.
Correct me if I'm wrong. What I understand that you are doing here is that you want to give input to Lmod that 64 is an architecture, 503 is an architecture, and so on.
Just 64, not 503.
Are you implying that everything else that follows until the very last one?
Oh no, it's just the
matter
break.
anymore, then.
It's just the break. I only need to know the break. Now, the problem would be is that if somebody bright throughout the 64 and said Intel-MPI/503/048, then they would have to make 503 an architecture.
If they still have the 64 there.
No, they do not have the 64. If they have the 64, I don't need to know that 503 is a quote architecture. It's the break. It's where the name ends and the architecture starts is what I need to know.
Yeah, so if we actually give the NAAV as input to Lmod to interpret everything in this manner, is it because we cannot have really consistency?
Not that many sites use name architecture version. There are lots of sites that use category name version.
Actually, you have done a little bit of homework as regards that. Right at the beginning of playing with EasyBuild, I think there is somewhere a table in the EasyBuild wiki, very early days, where I went to find the netcdf delivered module file across multiple HPC sites, maybe 20, maybe something like that. So you can actually see there what are the different ways of describing this. But again, the comment I have here is the following. First of all, when you say that A, I personally don't see it as A only, because it could also be a feature. I would rather call it.
I don't care what you call it.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care. Architecture is just a name for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't care what you call it. It could be a feature. I don't care. It's just, if you want to call it blue, I don't care.
Yes. Now the question here is, how can we make this arbitrarily flexible?
Yes.
Without making it costly for you as the developer, basically.
Yes. Okay, what I need to know is what I'm calling A. A could stand for architecture, or it could stand for anything. That covers me. I need to know what the A's are. My solution is you have to register what the A's are. Somehow.
The list is in order.
No.
So if you do, in the case of Intel MPI, say you have a 64, 32, and AVX, and they are all known architectures.
Yes.
What happens if you do module load Intel MPI? Which one does it pick?
Well, it'll do it lexicographically, or unless you have a dot version in the directory.
Can't you make it that the order in the list matters? That you can just specify it there, like AVX goes before 64?
Wait, there's two things you're trying to do here. One is match Tmod, and then two, you're trying to make it better.
That's good, right?
Let's get the first one done. It's hard enough to do the first one. But yes, you could make the table, if you're willing to give me values so that they're ordered, then yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
So instead of saying true, you would set 1, 2, 3, and the higher the number, the higher priority it has.
Or, well, the plan is to just specify it as a list. The list is ordered, right?
The list could be
So
ordered.
the order in which you give it to Lmod will take it into account. Order matters. So
Fine. I mean, if you want to support that, that's fine. But somehow I have to know what the anything is.
yeah.
And because I want it to be, I want the category name version to work by default. And so that's the big deal for me. Is category name version should work out of the box. I don't want people having to register categories. I think that registering architectures, there's just, well, I've been doing this for a while, and this is the first time it's come up, so. Now, that doesn't mean that more people, but the people who are on the environment modules mailing list know that I sent out lots and lots of questions and comments to see what people did, and of course, that doesn't mean that sites aren't doing this and just not telling me. That's fine, but Bright's the only one I could find that was doing it. That doesn't mean that's the only site that's doing it, but that's the only one I could find. Yeah?
How will you go about supporting something like C/V/A/A or feature or whatever you call it?
If you want to have C/N/A, it's fine.
V, and then all the features, architectures, whatever.
CNAV?
CNV, and then all architectures, features, or whatever.
Oh, if you did it that way, that would be horrible.
It exists. It exists. I have seen that CDF being provided in this manner.
I'll show him the wiki page. I found it.
Yeah, it exists.
I don't know how to support that.
Why not make that a tunable? That my namespace is basically CNVAA, and then things should be taken from there.
Because then you're required, then then what do I do when it's not? You tell me. See, with Tmod, you don't have to do that. So I don't know how to support that.
They have this in Texas A&M, according to the list that Flutus compiled. You have netcdf 411/PGI/10.13, which is the PGI version, /64 at the end.
Okay, I don't know how to support it. I mean, you'd have to register 411 as an architecture.
Wow, that's not, it's a version.
I don't care. It's a directory.
It is, yeah.
I mean, I agree.
I see what you mean. It violates the rule that the version has to be a file. That's what you are saying.
The version has to be a file. If it's not a file, I have to be told.
That's the way it is in Lmod right now.
So these guys at Texas are basically creating a subdirectory with the version, and this is what they are doing.
Yeah.
Very likely.
And the 64 is a file.
Opinions about that? Is that good, bad? It's
weird.
neutral?
But it's because all of them is called bright.
Say again?
It's all of them because of bright.
Well, Bright's the one who wants this.
Yeah, I know.
So
I mean,
the thing is, Bright wants to move to Lmod because the old thing is dead. But because of the way they have their modules organized now, it makes it very difficult for them to move.
We use also Bright, but we try to avoid to install any kind of modules and this kind of things for us because I think it's doing really bad. But that's I personally think category. I want my modules that I use to be name version. I think category name version is too much typing. Especially if categories have more than one letter in them, that's just too much typing. But that's me. But you know, in terms of documentation, I get it. In terms of organization, I get why category name version works well. And it may just be that there are sites that are just not going to move to Lmod. I mean, you know, I'm not giving up the one name rule. And that's the problem.
Somehow I have a feeling it doesn't collide with the one name rule, it does collide with the rule version has to be a file, which is another kind of.
No, well, they're the same because I have to walk the directory tree and know where the break happens.
my question is that why don't you make a solution that when you have the name directory, you put a file .name or something like that, and then
You could do that, but you could do that. You could do all kinds of extra things to detect this stuff.
I don't want.
But that means modifying, that means adding something to people, you know, the idea, I mean, yeah, you could do all kinds of things. I mean, you could give me, you know, there could be some sort of pattern matching rule that could be.
My question is, sorry to interrupt you, that you define all the category, architecture in a table. Why don't you just simply define CNV, and you know where is the name, or NAV, and then you don't have to modify it.
You could do that. I mean, you can. I thought that registering single names as architecture would be the easiest thing to do.
From the user or the programmer side?
No, from the user point of view too.
You also have to take into account speed, right? If you make Lmod check for the .name everywhere,
No, but I'm just
it's going to
saying.
impact speed.
But the point is here that now I have to figure out the architecture. What are
You probably know what the architectures are. Bright knows.
Yeah, but why don't you just simply define the name? I mean, the module hierarchy scheme for Lmod, and then
Because
would it be easier? I don't know.
I think Bright has a mix of things. They may do Intel/MPI and then GCC and OpenAPI. So how deep something is, this may not be the same thing across.
Yeah, it's not the same depth.
Okay.
They have things at different levels.
Yeah, it's a real mess, and I don't have a good solution for it. I mean, the other solution is to drop the one name rule. If I drop the one name rule, then it gets easy. Because I already know what this, I mean, you know.
Oh, but it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense the one name rule. So
Yeah, I mean, I like the one name rule. I think it's stupid to have to.
what about with what is it? The one name rule? Is it case sensitive or case insensitive?
Case sensitive.
It makes sense actually.
Because what I do is, the module table is just short names equals a key value, you know, there's a table for each module that you have loaded, which is the short name, and where it's located, the full name, properties, all that stuff. And so then, when, you know, and then, so that's how that works, yeah.
I have a little challenge, I want to hear the answer. If I replace all the slashes in this arbitrary C and D combinations or whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
and I replace this with underscores,
yeah.
that has a single name, you will never have a conflict. And if you try to do that loaded, what happens?
Well, that's what, I mean, if you replace, you know, if you had, you're talking about having Intel 64 underscore 64 underscore 503 underscore 408 or 048.
Yeah, replace all the slashes with underscore, yeah.
Well, then there is no conflict. It has one name and there's no version associated with it.
Things become loadable, but what do you lose about that? You lose the swap functionality, certainly.
You lose the one name rule, right? I mean,
Well, I mean, in other words, there's a rule in Lmod that says if you're a file in a directory that has subdirectories, you're a name without a version. So if you had, you know, Intel 64 underscore, then that's a file. It has no version associated with it. If it's at the top level or it's in a subdirectory with other subdirectories, then that makes it a name without a version. So you can load as many of those as you want. That's how I sort of tell the difference between what I call meta modules and regular modules. And there's no real distinction between meta modules and modules except they have a name with no version associated with them. So like, we have a module called TACC. There's only one TACC module. There's no version associated with it. And it's at the top level. Anyway, so, I hadn't thought about that. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Okay, let's discuss it a bit later. Yeah.
Have you heard back from Bright on? Did you communicate this to them? What you're planning?
No,
to
I
do?
haven't, I've just happened to, no, I need to do that, but this new information about having 64 at the end, oh, God.
Well, we're recording this, so we can show them the video.
Okay.